thought it was done. Its lifeless gaze would no longer control my life. But even then I knew that was a lie. I was just biding my time until I'd do the one thing I feared the most. The one thing I would spend days, weeks, no, a month. I would spend a month studying in hopes of persevering. Every failed attempt at delaying the inevitable all came crashing down. I knew what I'd have to do. I would have to learn.
Oh hey guys, welcome back to part 13 of the Devlog. A few episodes ago, I fixed the way my chaser enemy functioned in my game. Essentially what I was fixing was his constant collision issues. I was developing a very messy system to prevent him from colliding through walls, so I just switched over to using a rigid body instead. However, even when I fixed that, there was one major feature that I had not fixed that I just kind of brushed under the rug for a bit. You see, the enemy followed the player around, but it didn't know where the walls are, meaning that once the player stepped behind something, the enemy will just continue to follow in a straight line. This meant that the enemy could get stuck and not be able to fight, or just get killed by the player who was hiding behind the corner. Now in most games, rather than just walk to the player in a straight line, the enemy will find a route to the player around the obstacles. This involves a system called pathfinding. There are different types of pathfinding, such as I don't know how to pronounce that, or the sample algorithm. I chose to use the A-star pathfinding method because I saw people talk about it on YouTube and there was a tutorial on how to put it in Unity. A-star works like this. You create a grid of nodes and are constantly comparing each node's current distance from the start and end points. The grid constantly reviews the node with the lowest F cost, which is the value that's found by adding the G cost, which is the distance from the starting point, and the H cost, which is the distance from the end point. These values can be manipulated depending on other factors, like if you want to make a certain part of the terrain less viable for a path, you can increase the overall value of the nodes on that piece of terrain. To address walls or other obstacles preventing pathfinding, the grid will check to see if a node is touching an unwalkable area and then prevent it from being considered as part of the path. Fairly understandable, you know, a bit complicated, but I get it. Now in practice, in the end I got it working. However, another issue arose from the way enemies would overlap each other. Because of how pathfinding is handled by a node-based system, it is very likely certain enemies will wind up at the same node and just sort of fuse together. Using all 5 of my brain cells, I decided to increase the overall value of the nodes the pathfinding is currently accessing. Each time the pathfinding goes through a node, a boolean attached to it is set to true, making the node's F cost slightly larger. This meant I needed to switch from arrays of vector 2s to arrays of nodes, since I needed a way to reference the original node's boolean so I could set it back to false once the enemy walks through that node. Rather than force the enemies to completely avoid each other, this just makes them stay out of each other's way for the most part. I'm sure it's not the best solution, but it seems to work well enough. Now that I have this working, I can implement it into the enemy's AI, which will allow me to make way more interesting enemy variations. Right now I've been working on getting the chaser enemy to use pathfinding, and it's going pretty well so far, so we'll have to see how it works with other enemies later down the line. A huge thank you to Sebastian Lague for his tutorials on this. I would not have been able to complete this otherwise. I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to watch his pathfinding series. Thank you for all the support on the last video as well. We are nearing 100 subscribers and I'm so thankful for every single one of you who have been checking out the channel. That's it for now. This has been Blue's Clues.